the face of the earth. We must crush them. We must smash them. We must stamp them out. We, the people of Oceania, and our traditional allies, the people of Eurasia, will not rest until the final victory has been achieved. Death to the eternal enemy of Oceania. Death! Death! Death!
One of the Nazi regime's most important instruments of power, the Ministry of Popular Enlightenment and Propaganda, was established opposite the Reich Chancellery. At first, old buildings on Wilhelmplatz Square were used. However, they did not offer enough space and were extended with new wings by 1938. The man in charge of the department, Josef Goebbels, held a PhD in German studies and was a brilliant public speaker with a knack for manipulating people. In 1926, the radical fanatic succeeded in building a strong local chapter of the Nazi Party in Red Berlin. As party leader of the branch, he made sure aggressive actions were taken against political opponents. Street battles between the brown-shirt thugs and communists were notorious. He became head of propaganda for the Nazi Party in 1930 and ran their election campaigns very effectively from then on. He developed a fanatic loyalty to Hitler, who brought him into his closest circle of power. Goebbels purposely promoted the Führer cult, which made Hitler appear as a figure of salvation and redemption to a broad section of the population. His ministry was created soon after the Nazis' accession to power in March 1933. As both Goebbels and Hitler were aware that oppression and terror alone could not provide a lasting power base, the mission of the propaganda minister was to seduce and guide the masses. In the words of Goebbels, the goal was to shape and mould the people until they become our slaves, and to achieve a spiritual mobilization in the service of National Socialism. For this purpose, his agency was given complete control over the cultural and media landscape and subjected it to a process of forcible coordination. In this way, a machinery of indoctrination was created, which had both a pushy as well as subtle influence on the mood of the public. Control of the press was a core task. This was achieved by banning undesirable newspapers, through the intimidation and expulsion of dissidents, as well as the surveillance of editorial departments. An important instrument of control was the Reich government's press conference, which took place daily with hand-picked staff who were told what to write in tomorrow's newspaper.
Was the Newspeak Committee
working overtime?
Butter, 2%. Milk, 6%.
Plus big wastage and adjectives.
8%. Mutton, 3%.
Plus big problem is timing the language to scientific advance.
Pork, 3%.
Yes.
Poultry, 9%.
It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words.
Sugar, 2.4%. Flour,
You won't have seen the dictionary, 10th edition yet, Smith.
7.5%.
It's that thick.
Coffee, 8%.
The 11th edition will be that thick.
Bread, 7%. Overall,
Well, the revolution will be complete when the language is perfect.
The secret is to move from translation to direct thought to automatic response. No need for self-discipline. Language coming from here, not from here.
Excuse me for intruding, but what you're saying is that we should be rid of the last vestiges of Goldsteinism when the language has been cleaned. I couldn't be more in agreement with you, brother.
Absolutely.
Here's Justin Trudeau. So what is Justin Trudeau up to these days? Well, the Minister of Canadian Heritage Mandate letter penned there by Justin Trudeau has an interesting thing in it. It's published the other day, by the way. I will expect you to work, and this is Justin Trudeau, with your colleagues and through established legislative, etc., basically in order to create new regulations for social media platforms, starting with the requirement that all platforms remove illegal content, including hate speech, within 24 hours or face significant penalties. First of all, they're already required to remove illegal content. It's illegal. But what is hate speech? Well, there you have the basically the abstraction, the crystal ball and the tarot cards that let you depict anything you want removed to be removed from the internet within 24 hours or face significant penalties within the country of Canada. And of course, in the country of Canada, anything can be hate speech. There was a comedian, of course, that got a $60,000 or $40,000 Canadian fine for telling a joke on stage. Anything can be hate speech in Canada, including using terminology such as applying the wrong pronouns to people even though you might not know their pronouns. You might call them a male and a female. Accident, call the police department, they will arrive. Of course, in the UK, Count Dankula was arrested, found guilty, spent time in jail. He was arrested, taken, questioned, and then placed in jail for a period of time, then released, and then went through the court trial and found guilty for telling a joke with his pug dog. So this is the problem. This basically is a blank check to remove anything that exists in reality.
Brothers and sisters, 1 week from now, in this very square, we shall, as a demonstration of our resolve, as a sure sign to those who attempt to threaten our party and our saints, we shall execute publicly the same number of East Asian prisoners by hanging, drawing, and quartering.
It literally is the most basic core tenet of understanding reality, but of course everything is racist, everything is sexist and misogynistic, and everything needs to be pointed out according to these people that will not let people just live like people. Here's just some headlines here, and just a reminder: trans woman charged with hate crime for admitting she's a man. That's from the Pluralist there. And of course this is how it starts. Just a quick thing before we go to this army story, which is all related. Expert psychologist blocked on Twitter for expressing clinical opinion on transgenderism. This person is a world expert in this field. So here it goes. First, they use an abstraction that's very hard to understand. They convince everyone that they have the right to ban things based on that. Okay, so that's tier one. Then they come for anybody, even people that have an expert opinion, and they silence them. Then they change the actual way in which things are taught within traditional academic aspects.
Only the disciplined mind can see reality, Winston. It needs an act of self-destruction, an effort of the will. Do you remember writing in your diary, freedom is the freedom to say 2 + 2 = 4?
Yes.
How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
4.
And if the party says there are not 4, but 5, then how many?
5.
No. That's no use. You're lying. How many fingers, please?
4. What else can I say? 5, 4, anything you like. Only please stop it. Stop the pain. How can I help it? How can I help what I see in front of my eyes? 2 and 2 makes 4.
Sometimes, Winston. Sometimes they're 5.
Canada has now passed a total of 200,000 cases of COVID-19 since the spring, with almost 22,000 active cases across the country today. Here and around the world, the fight against this virus is far from over. And in order to win it, we have to keep working together. Canada is a big country, and the pandemic is playing out differently in different provinces and territories. That's why I'm asking everyone to keep following the guidelines of their local public health authorities. This is a Team Canada effort. And when you wear a mask, limit your in-person close contacts, and use the free COVID Alert app, you're doing your part. As a government, we're doing ours too. Since March, we've received almost 800 million pieces of personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, gowns, and face shields to protect frontline workers and Canadians. This month alone, we've distributed over 20 million pieces of PPE to the provinces and territories. And we're continuing to work around the clock to ship even more to the front lines. This where the best thing Canadians can do, can listen to experts, can listen to doctors, can listen to people who are focused on keeping them safe every single day. Whether it's wearing a mask, whether it's keeping your distance, whether it's getting the COVID Alert app, or whether it's eventually getting vaccinated when we have a successful and safe vaccine. These are things that Canadians need to do that unfortunately there is a tremendous amount of noise and harmful misinformation about on the internet.
New modes of communication were also used. Goebbels considered radio to be a promising means to widely spread state propaganda. Therefore, radio was systematically promoted. An affordable radio receiver had already been presented at the radio exhibition in Berlin in the summer of 1933. Behind closed doors, this Volksempfänger radio receiver for the masses was nicknamed Goebbels' Gob. During the war, the radio offered plenty of entertainment and distraction and served to strengthen perseverance. The head demagogue was also very interested in film. With UFA, which also operated at the Potsdam-Babelsberg studios, a major film company came under state control and was used for official productions. Goebbels also enjoyed the glamour at premieres. You can see him here at the Ufer Palast Cinema am Zoo. Frequent affairs with actresses earned him the nickname the Buck of Babelsberg. He systematically promoted the cult around popular stars who added sparkle to the regime, among them the actress and singer Marika Rück. To raise the propaganda value of the 1936 Olympic Games, the ministry financed Leni Riefenstahl's two-part Olympic documentary film which had an aesthetic of heroism and attracted international attention. As the accompanying programme at the cinema, German newsreels also sought to teach the correct version of what was happening in the world.
In Belgium, the coronavirus crisis is deepening. All bars and restaurants are closing for a month as infections double every week. Belgium follows France in imposing a nightly curfew, and doctors have warned of a shortage of intensive care beds within weeks. The German Chancellor, praised for her government's handling of the first wave of infections, told Germans to prepare for hard days ahead as the number of cases there rises steadily.
Ich weiß, das klingt nicht nur hart.
I ask you to refrain from any trip that is not absolutely necessary, from any celebration that is not absolutely necessary. I know that this not only sounds tough, but in individual cases it is a severe sacrifice. But we only have to do this temporarily, and we ultimately do it for ourselves.
Infections are soaring across Europe with around 100,000 new cases a day, and the continent's power brokers seem increasingly powerless. On Saturday, the Austrian Foreign Minister Alexander Schallenberg confirmed he tested positive for the virus, raising fears an EU meeting he'd attended on Monday may have been a so-called super spreader event. The Belgian Foreign Minister's also gone into isolation with suspected symptoms. It comes a day after 3 EU leaders, including the Prime Minister of Finland, were forced to drop out of a Brussels summit as a precautionary measure. Most future meetings will now happen remotely. More than half of England's now under tougher COVID-19 rules. In London and other areas, a ban on households mixing inside, including bars and restaurants, came into force on Saturday as the capital moves from being at moderate risk to high risk in the government's 3-tier system. The county of Lancashire in the northwest moves to the top tier, very high risk, meaning no socialising outside a household bubble and the closure of bars and restaurants. But the Mayor of Manchester, the UK's third largest city, is resisting the toughest restrictions, warning of dismal consequences for the local economy.
The new restrictions are all part of the government's localised response in dealing with the rising infection rate, designed, said the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, to avoid the misery of a full national lockdown. But given that 28 million people, half the country, are facing these new restrictions, for many it's already beginning to feel like one. Niamh Barker, Al Jazeera, London.
In accordance with the principles of doublethink, it does not matter if the war is not real, or when it is that victory is not possible. The war is not meant to be won, it is meant to be continuous. The essential act of modern warfare is the destruction of the produce of human labor. A hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation. The war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its object is not victory over Eurasia or Eastasia, but to keep the very structure of society intact.
The final mission to save mankind has failed. The 70-mile-wide asteroid known as Matilda is set to collide with Earth in exactly 3 weeks' time, and we'll be bringing you our countdown to the end of days, along with all your classic rock favorites.
Feel free to wear your casual Friday clothing pretty much any day of the week. And if anyone wants to be CFO. Anyone?
So, what are you doing with the rest of your life?
Catching up on some me time, find God.
See Jesus in the morning. See Jesus in the noonday hour. See Jesus in the evening before the sun is going down. He said, "Knock, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find." He'll come in. If you're seeking, he'll come in. If you're seeking, he'll come in. Bless your name, Jesus. Bless your name, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord.